Today I will be showing you how to crochet my charming boot cuffs pattern. It's a free pattern on my website, which is linked below, and there is a printed pattern available on Etsy, also linked below. It's very inexpensive and it just helps out my channel and being able to make more free pattern tutorials for you, and I really appreciate it. You're going to need a 5mm hook, a yarn needle for weaving in ends, scissors that are really cute, and a locking stitch marker, and you will need a light worsted weight yarn or DK weight. I used the Lion Brand yarn in the Schitt's Creek line, which I think is now discontinued, unfortunately, in the color A Little Blush. You're going to start out with a slip knot. And then you're going to chain 11. And make sure you leave a tail a little longer than the one I have left here. You will see why in the end of the video. In the second chain from the hook, you're going to make a single crochet in the back loop of that little V that you can see there. And you will do this in each chain across so that you'll end up with 10 single crochets. So just a little single crochet in the back of each stitch across. Then you are going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work. And in the back loops, in the back V of each little stitch there of the previous row, you're going to work 1 single crochet all the way across. You can see in the video how I'm working in the back loop only. Just every once in a while, make sure you stop and count to make sure that you have 10 single crochets in each row, and make sure you don't miss any stitches from the previous row, because then it will get lopsided and you'll have to rip it back and it gets very frustrating. So when you get to the end, you're going to chain 1 at the end of each row. Chain 1, turn your work, and then continue in the same way, crocheting in the back loop only, single crocheting in the back loop only until you have 36 rows of single crochet. And I'll show you how to count that in a few minutes when I get my 36 rows. And you can start to see the ridges it makes, like a ribbing or a ridge. So keep doing this, and I'll meet you at the end of 36 rows, and you'll see that this is going to be the cuff of the boot cuffs. So just continue and I will meet you at the end. And in the meantime, you can enjoy a little bit of Mad Men while I crochet this part, but you may notice that I messed up and ended up with only 9 stitches. So I had to rip back my work. Remember I said crochet 10 stitches and make sure you always have 10 stitches. Well, I think I got a little sidetracked watching the show. So I will meet you when I have my 36 rows. Now here we're just going to count the rows to make sure that we have 36 rows. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36. So we have the 36 rows here. So you're going to chain 1. And then you're going to fold the work so that the chain 1 is in the front, and make sure that your working yarn is pushed to the back. And then you're going to, in the first stitch, make a slip stitch in the front of the stitch, and then in the back, the back strand of the stitch behind it. So you're just gonna slip stitch into each stitch by going through the first strand of the front stitch and the back strand of the back stitch. It's pretty easy to remember. And this just joins that cuff together. So slip stitch, join this all the way to the end, and you should have 10 slip stitches all the way across. Now you're going to be turning this piece so that the stitch you just finished is now at the top, so that it's right side out. And you're going to make sure that that yarn tail is tucked on the inside so you don't accidentally crochet with that. Chain 1 and then make a single chain into the top of each row. You'll kind of get into the rhythm of where the hook goes, and if you want to slow the video down here, you can do that so you can see where I put the hook for each row in case you're having a little trouble with this part. But you're going to end up with 36 single crochets around. And when you get to the end, you can just slip stitch into that first single crochet to join it. And then you're going to chain 2 and make a double crochet into that same stitch. And then you're going to want to put that locking stitch marker in the top of that first chain 2 just to know where your first stitch was so that you can join it at the end. And then you're going to chain 1, skip 2 stitches, and make 2 double chains into the next stitch. And then you're going to chain 1, skip 2 stitches, and do the same thing. Make 2 double chains into that third stitch. Chain 1, skip 2 stitches, and you're just going to do this all the way to the end. And you'll have 2 stitches there, so skip those 2 stitches and slip stitch into that very first stitch. And it's a lot easier if you remove the stitch marker to join, to slip stitch and join that row. And then you're going to chain 2 and then turn your work. So now you're going to be working on the inside. Do a double chain right in the same space as that chain 2. And then put that stitch marker in the top of the chain 2 just to remember your spot where you started. Chain 1, and then into the next space right there, you're going to do 2 double chains. And then chain 1 after that, and then the same thing. In that next space, 2 double chains, chain 1, and then in the next space, 2 double chains, chain 1, and you're going to do that all the way to the end. So just continue this way all the way around, and I'll show you to slip stitch when we get to the end. So your last 2 double chains, you're going to chain 1 and then slip stitch into the top of that chain 2 space from the beginning of the row. Slip stitch to join. And then you're going to do the same thing, chain 2, turn, another double crochet in that space. Make sure you put that locking stitch marker in the top of the chain 2 to remember your spot. And then chain 1, and then in the next space you're going to do 2 double chains. I keep saying double chains, I mean double crochet. I don't know why I do that. I feel like I do that all the time. 2 double crochets, chain 1, and then continue all the way around, and you're going to do that for 5 rows until you have 5 granny stripe rows, and I will meet you back when I've done all that. And then you're just going to slip stitch in the top of the first chain 2 you're going to leave a nice long tail for that and fasten it off. And you'll see here when I weave in the bottom part that I did not leave a long enough tail. Remember at the beginning I said make sure you have a long tail at the end of your slip knot. I didn't leave a tail long enough to begin with for some reason, so you can see me struggling here to try to not lose the tail as I'm weaving in the end, but I managed to get that woven in without too much of a struggle, but just make sure you leave a long enough tail. And then weave in the ends also for the top part of it. I know there are more precise or better ways of weaving in the ends, but personally I'm not the weaving in ends police, and I just weave it in wherever it feels right so that it's nice and secure. Nobody ever said that I follow the rules, and that is why I make my own patterns. So get that nice and secure, and then when you're done you can cut off the end. So I measured these boot cuffs and they measure about 4 3/4 inches or 12 centimeters wide. And you can see that they're pretty stretchy with the ribbing, and even the top part, it's pretty stretchy. And then they're about 5 inches or 12.5 centimeters tall. But you can always make them taller by adding more granny stripe rows. But I hope you enjoy making and wearing these, or giving them as a gift, or whatever you end up doing with them. Make sure you tag me on Instagram if you make these. I would love to see what you've created. All of my information is in the description box below.